All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting
Yeah, but I'm
for
on mute
Tuesday,
tonight.
February
Just wait
18th.
for my,
Oh,
I'm not on the agenda. I don't know how fast things will go. I just have to pay
should
attention.
we wait? We do. All right, I think we got that cleared up. All right, so yeah, good evening, everyone. City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, February 18th. No study session item for tonight. We're going to push it off for early March. So I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take a roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Present.
Member Newnham.
Present.
Member Pring.
Present.
Member Russell.
Present.
Member Ward.
Present.
Member Wright.
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5. This is the minutes from the regular city council meeting from February 3rd. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the February 3rd meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from February 3rd.
Thank you, Member Newnham and Mayor Pro Tem. All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Newnham.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to recognitions. City Council would like to recognize the Englewood Finance Department, the Englewood Finance Department Accounting and Budget Divisions, team members for receiving Government Finance Officers Association's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award and Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is the 23rd time the city has received the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. It reflects the commitment of the governing body and staff to meeting the highest principles of government budgeting. In order to receive the budget award, the entity has to satisfy nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation. These guidelines are designed to assess how well an entity's budget serves as a policy document, financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. Budget documents must be rated proficient in all 4 categories, as well as in the 14 mandatory criteria within those categories to receive the award. Englewood has also received the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. The city has received this award for the past 40 years. This award program encourages local governments to go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles to prepare annual comprehensive financial reports that evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosure. The goal of the program is not to assess the financial health of participating governments, but rather to ensure that users of their financial statements have the information they need to do themselves. So I want to congratulate the accounting and budgeting divisions and thank you for your dedication to the city of Englewood. So thank you very much for that award. And as usual, we will go ahead and take a picture with all the members of council, and I do have 2 certificates up here that I'll pass out to the team. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda. Actually, there's no appointments, communications, and proclamations for tonight, so we're moving on to recognition and public comment. Englewood residents must provide their address or cross streets. Non-Englewood residents must provide the name of your city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you would be moved to the bottom of the list, and written materials must be submitted to the city clerk in advance or at the meeting. Audiovisual materials must be submitted to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting. So we will be limiting presentation to 3 minutes or public comments to 3 minutes. There will not be any dialogue. And tonight, Mayor Pro Tem will be giving the response to public comments. I see that we have 2 people in attendance for tonight. We have, let's see here, is it Joseph Simone? Here to speak on an item. Did I get that name correct? Are we online or, actually no, they have to be in person. Joseph, if you want to come up and just speak. Good evening, Joseph. If actually you provided the information we needed, so if you want to go ahead and just click on the button, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. First of all, I want to like to speak. Tia, is that how you said? I read an article in the last Englewood magazine about. You said when spring gets here, we need to clean up our yards, front and back, and everything. My problem is, when are we going to clean up the streets? We have got crap in our streets for months that has not been cleaned up, and I'd like to know why. That's one of the reasons. The other reason that I'm here is because I would like to discuss about Old Hamden, what they're planning on doing. I travel that quite a lot, and I would like to talk to, I believe it's Rachel, that has made the plans, and I find that there's a bunch of plans that could be revised. There's some things there that are just not going to work. And why go spend a lot of money on something that's not going to work? Putting a medium down the middle of the road is not going to work, because when you have buses, ambulances, fire trucks, garbage trucks, and everything else, they're tying up traffic. You tell me how you're going to get through there with one lane on each side. When a bus comes off of Downing, turning on to Old Hamden, going west, there's no way that he can make that turn without hitting that medium. And I would like to take Rachel, or not take her, but walk with her and explain to her some of the things that she's proposed and make some changes. I think some changes need to be made before we spend a lot of money unnecessarily. So that's my...
Joseph, thank you very much. No, nothing to add on Old Hampton?
Do what?
Nothing to add for public comment?
No, not
Okay.
really. I mean, I live right down, not too far from there.
Right, exactly. Joseph, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you for speaking.
Okay.
I believe you've been here before
Yes.
discussing the roads needing to be cleaned up. Is there a specific area that's more troubling than another?
Well, I live off of Lafayette, so it's from Lafayette all the way down. So
Lafayette, and give me a cross street, please, so I could get it addressed.
well, I live
Just south of
Lafayette
Floyd.
and
Just south of Floyd.
Floyd, no, between Floyd and Girard is where I live. But then when you travel down Old Hamden, you're going to find that there's several bus stops along the way. When the buses are stopped, letting out people off, on and off, especially by the hospital, it's going to tie traffic up. On the left-hand turns, I believe that you're going west and you're going to make a left-hand turn. Depending on how long those are, you're going to have cars piled up there, and that's going to tie up traffic. There's a lot, I think, it's a great idea to fix it up. I mean, it's been...
Joseph, yeah, I think you answered the question that Member Wright had.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No,
Perfect.
thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Joseph, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will give a response here after the next 2 speakers. Up next is Christine Brinker. with no topic given.
Mayor,
Yes,
while we're transitioning, can we confirm that the clock and the lights are working for public
Yes.
comment?
we can do.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. So actually, we'll just start it again. So Christine, you have given the information. You're part of District 1, so when you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, members of council. Thanks for having me here. I wanted to bring up a comment about one of the items on your agenda that I saw tonight, the first reading approval of the 401 Englewood Parkway project. In the bigger picture, I'm really glad that you're working on trying to find solutions to our housing affordability crisis and trying to revitalize the part of downtown Englewood that I unaffectionately refer to as parking lot land. And so I'm really pleased with the overall goals of that project. When I was reading through the materials, though, there was just one thing that caught my eye that I wanted to see if you might be able to discuss, and that's the multimodal fee in lieu. It is slated for $65,000, and that caught my eye because that's pennies for what real safe biking and pedestrian infrastructure actually costs. The equation seemed to have a flaw in the methodology. In particular, they calculated that corridor will add maybe 10% of the traffic. We'll charge them 10% of the costs from the Englewood Parkway multimodal corridor study. That part seemed good. I mean, that's a reasonable way to calculate it. The problem is that that number from that study was the short-term quick fixes to try to address that corridor. I sat in on all those meetings, all the presentation, and it was very clear that there was a long-term vision of making that an area that we all absolutely love and are proud of and want to go. And also, it was recognizing that we're budget strapped, and why don't we just try to make some quick fixes just to hold us off for a few years. And they took that lower number. So it's 10% of a very low number, not 10% of a higher number. And the project there at 401 Englewood Parkway is going to be there, I assume, for decades and decades and decades. So I don't know why we're charging them the short-term quick fix just last us several years. And those quick fixes, they're what we call paint and post. It's white paint and those stupid little flappy straw things. No one likes those. It's better than nothing, but only barely. They're not fun to bike on. They don't make you feel safe. Everyone thinks they're ugly as sin. So I don't think that that's what you should be basing the cost on. I would much prefer you base the multimodal fee on what we want the area to be. Otherwise, it's the rest of us citizens that are left subsidizing that amount or being left for decades with substandard, unsafe biking and pedestrian infrastructure. Thank you.
Christine, thank you very much for coming tonight. Any questions from members of council? Member Noonan-Camp, go ahead.
I have a question. You mentioned you don't like paint and post. I know we've also heard some feedback about not liking shares. What would be your ideal bike or multimodal design? Can you turn your mic back on? Sorry. Thank you.
There we go. When you take a look at some of the materials from that corridor study, it had some really good pictures. Some of them maybe, I don't know if they were from real places or from AI, I don't recall. But they have a wide sidewalk, they have planters, benches, trees, etc. It's not just, here's the cars, here's some little flappy straws, and the bikes go kind of down it. But some of the pictures I'd seen from the Old Hamden corridor, but I haven't looked at those for a while, so I don't know if it's changed. Some of those looked really nice. Some place where you feel happy to be there. And when I see the paint and posts, I'm glad that there's at least something between me and the 2-ton vehicles that could squish me or squish my daughter. But it's not enjoyable, it's not pretty, it's not revitalizing. It's like a stopgap measure. And I don't like it when I'm running around Denver. So I didn't want to see it come here either. Like I said, it's okay for the short term, just not for the long term.
That's very helpful. I think you're talking about the mixed-use path. Is that what
Yeah.
you're, okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
All right, with no further questions, Christine, thank you very much for your time
you.
tonight. All right, up next is Regan with the city from outside of Englewood. Hello, Regan. When you're ready, you can begin to speak.
Good evening, council. A city outside of Englewood, it's utopia. Why won't you say the city of Utopia, Mayor? I am from Utopia. So at any rate, speaking about spending money and saving money, like that $50,000 that this city has already spent on trying to criminalize me through administrative hearings and all your other nonsense, just think of all the things you could have done with that $50,000 and what's yet to come. So I also wanted to talk about severe weather sheltering. I find it kind of problematic that Hatforce gets all this money, all this taxpayer money, while 5280 gets none. And then Hatforce doesn't even have the common courtesy to advertise on their recorded line that the overflow shelter is at 5280. Could you imagine needing shelter tonight and calling that phone number and they say, we have overflow shelter, but call this same number again to find out where it is, when they don't answer the phone? Isn't that terrible? And speaking of 5280, I want to talk about all of those bogus calls that the neighbors made on 5280. I went and spent over $100 to get all the police reports of all those bogus calls. And did you know that it's actually a crime in the city of Englewood to false report to the police department? And the police department is refusing to do anything about that. Every single one of you have your heads down. Boy, you must be busy. So here in Englewood, when you decide that you want to swat somebody you don't like or some organization that you don't like, all you do is call the cops and make up anything you want. And it's really unfortunate what they did to one individual. Somebody lied to the extent and said that she'd gone to their door. And so that gave the cop probable cause to run her and her husband through the national and state database. What do you think of that? You think that's like information collection? Like illegal? I think it is. Records requests at the PD. Yeah, no response. Did a records request weeks ago for a 911 call, no response. I met a nice guy today. Well, not today. He's sitting in the back of the room. The PD's trying to destroy him too. That's Mr. Johnson. I've been writing to you about him. It's really a shame that this city cannot stop this cycle. When is it going to stop? How
Regan, your 3
long?
minutes are up. Regan. Member Wright, go ahead. You have a
Yes.
question.
Ms. Benton? Thank you. You mentioned that there was a false police report made on somebody. Do you have the name of that person?
I do.
May we have it?
I don't know if that should be, well, you know what? Yeah, actually, it's public record anyway, because they put her and her husband in a police report. That would be Kelly McCloskey, Englewood's Citizen of the Year.
Any further questions, Member Wright?
Yes. Mr. Johnson that's sitting back there right now,
Correct?
is he the gentleman that you sent us information, the video on that is the Second Amendment open carry gentleman?
That is the individual, with 3 additional criminal cases in Englewood.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, Regan, thanks for your time. And anyone else online, Stephanie? Nope. All right, that concludes public comment. Mayor Pro Tem, when you're ready, you can give a response.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I'll address Mr. Simone's comments first. Thanks for bringing your concerns here as far as the cleaning up the yards and the streets. I totally agree that the city should be held to the same standard that that the citizens are in terms of maintaining the property. So I appreciate that reminder. And it's something I know council has taken steps to address as well in the past. So we appreciate that. On the Old Hamden project, we've been working towards this project for a number of years, have received a lot of public feedback. I know others have kind of agreed with your take that this is too much narrowing. It's my sense that this is a really important corridor for multimodal travel, for bikes and pedestrians. It already gets a lot of foot traffic and people in wheelchairs, and we wanted to make sure that this is accessible in that way as well. And so in some ways, the traffic slowing that may happen along there, just because the street's going to be a little narrower, is beneficial in that the cars will hopefully be moving slower and have less risk of impacting pedestrians, which has happened close to Swedish recently. So that's an important factor for us as well. And then finally, we did get a report on how they analyze whether fire trucks and buses can make it through these different areas, and they actually have a simulation that they run them through to make sure that they're going to fit through on all these things. So I've been assured that this is sufficient to carry the kind of vehicles that should be going through there. But we do appreciate your concerns and opinion on the project as well. Ms. Brinker, thanks for coming out. I want to be careful here because we're in a place where we've already had the public hearing on this, so we're not supposed to be making our decision based on new information. But do appreciate your attentiveness to the project. And I would also mention that it's very possible there's also, when they go to pull permits, impact fees and that kind of thing that are dedicated for public transportation projects as well. I don't know for sure, but that's something that could be coming as well. So that's all I'll say to those comments. And that concludes my council response. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of council requests, please. I do know that Mr. Simone has come and spoke at council about the streets previously, I believe. Member Newnenkamp had put a council request about looking at the streets and possibly getting them street clean. Can we take a look again in that area and see if there's anything additional we could do? Also, Kelly McCluskey, is there a way to look into this report and see what's been done, what's going on, what had happened? And we all have received, I believe, one video with Mr. Johnson. I don't know the full extent, but possibly a council request that could be looked into that a little bit. If there is any harassment from the original police contact, if we could look into that, please, and make sure. I'd like council request to see what further contact has happened, possible charges, and where we're at, please. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Wright. Anyone else? Go ahead, Member Russell.
Thank you. And, you know, I know that people on staff have actually said they have a computer-generated thing about turn radius, but there are corners here at Eladi and Floyd where the bus itself has to back up 3 or 4 times to turn right off of Laddie onto Floyd. Did they do those radius things there? And my question is, once we begin having these problems, is there anything that we can do as a city to fix it once we've put up the medians? So that's a council request. Because I think that is something, I appreciate Mr. Simone sharing that with us, because I do think it is going to create a problem. And I would like to know, can we fix it after we have the project done? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. I'm making notes here just to make sure I have it correct in. Perfect. All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much. And that concludes public comments. We're going to move straight into consent agenda items. I have 4 items pulled, and they are 9A3, 9A4, 9A7 and 9A8. Is that correct, Member Wright? I believe those are, did that sound right? I just based it off the email, so. 9A3, 9A4, 9A7, and 9A8. Anyone else? Any other items? All right, perfect. Can I get a motion to approve 9A1, 2, 5, 6, 9B1, 2, and 3, and 9C1, 2, 3, and 4?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, perfect. The first item is going to be 9A3. This is a question about the Sister Cities Partnership Agreement. City Manager Sean Lewis, do you have an answer to the question, where does the money come from to fund the Sister Cities International?
And I do want to clarify, Member Wright, are you talking about our membership with Sister Cities International, the organization?
I didn't know that we paid a membership and then just to fund it overall. I saw there's grants and that type of thing. So I'd like to know where those grants come from. And if there is a membership, what is that membership?
Great, thank you for the question. So Sister Cities International helps cities in the U.S. connect with cities internationally. We only began to be a member of that last year, but they've been in existence since Eisenhower set up the program many decades ago. That membership, I believe, is $400, and that comes out of our general memberships and subscriptions budget in the city manager's office. With regard to the Sister Cities delegation, the 6 students, they're juniors in high school from Englewood High School. The city council in the 2025 budget adopted last November passed $5,000 in the council budget for scholarships for them to go. And Englewood Rotary Club agreed to make up the rest of the cost, what was not covered by the Englewood City Council's funding of $5,000 for those students to go completely for free. And that dollar amount was $2,656. And that was a combination between the club itself and the Englewood Rotary Foundation, which is a separate organization run by the club.
City Manager Lewis, can you correct the dollar amount that was given by the Rotary?
I believe it was 2,656.
I heard 22,000.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah.
Yes, 2,656.
Yeah, I just want to make people to know that it was a lower amount and not the 22,000.
Right.
So, thank you, City Manager Lewis. Any further questions on this item? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A3? Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis.
Move to approve 9A3.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Nunnenkamp. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 9A4. This is the amendment to Englewood 2024 Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority Water Loan. We have Director of South Platte Renew, Director Pieter Van Rij. Good evening.
Mayor and Council, I'm here to answer any questions on, I believe there's a question about the project description, one of the project descriptions.
Go ahead, Member Wright.
Yes, I actually have a couple questions, please. It said if possible, directly connecting Zone 2 to the Allen treatment to the distribution center. Where
Yeah.
is it connected to now?
Well, so what that project is, we've, over the last couple of years, we've done an analysis of our entire distribution system to try and find vulnerability points as it relates to single feeds to different parts of the system. And so we found one of those single feed vulnerabilities in Bellevue. So what this does is it's a project to create a redundant feed so that if something breaks on that line, we have a different way to feed water into that zone. So that's what this project does, is it creates redundancy to getting water into Zone 2. So water gets to Zone 2 right now. This just creates resiliency and redundancy so that we have more flexibility to get water in case of a break.
Okay, so if this wasn't approved, then there's still that feed there and we're okay.
Yeah, this is risk mitigation. So, I mean, it's operated this way for decades. This was something we just saw as a way to mitigate risk as we continue to improve the reliability of the distribution system.
Okay. My other question is, so reading through this pack, apparently with the lead line and everything else we have with the loans that we've received, we apparently have about $10 million. I don't want to say extra, but that's kind of how in my mind. And with it, we're looking at these other improvements that we may be able to do.
So that's correct. So when we originally estimated the cost of the lead program, when we initially went for this funding, we estimated it at $40 million. As we have done more work to inventory the lines, we have been fortunate in the sense that there's been less of those lines available. However, we've closed the loans for this funding, and so we have many other needs in the distribution system that were unfunded. Most specifically, the Union Avenue line is something that we're putting in here. That's a line that's had a number of breaks on it that we've talked about in the past. So the Clarkson line, which has had a number of breaks in it, and then this redundant feed. So these are three important projects that we see improvements to the distribution system that, because there's less lead lines needed, if to the degree that the money becomes available as we need to spend the full amount that has been borrowed, we would invest it in these other projects. So that's why we're amending the loan to be able to capitalize on those funds for those projects to get those done as well.
Okay, so if we had more lead lines than anticipated, or if we had the amount of lead lines that we thought we had and this money was spent on them, when would have these projects been addressed and with what money?
Do you remember the graph with the mountain graph with all the funding questions that we have?
We have so many mountain graphs.
That we've talked about, the colorful graph that shows all the funding needs. So basically what would happen is some of those funding gaps that we've shown in those previous presentations are what is allowing us to close those gaps right now in the immediate term, is the fact that our lead program is less total lines. If for some reason, as we start inventorying the rest of the city, which we should have done in the next 6 months or so, if it turns out that it results in a $40 million program, then we have to go and shift around priorities for these other projects. So they just go back into the funding queue in terms of what we can prioritize.
Okay.
Right now, we think we're in a fortunate position to be able to accomplish all these things and close some of that funding gap that we identified between now and 2031.
Okay, and then I have one more question.
Sure.
The authorized officers, I believe currently it's P&Z, are the authorized officers?
So I think is that another
Yeah,
item?
it's
That's another
item in the item.
I think it comes in this and it comes in later. Well, it was in this pack also, I guess.
Well, we can address it here too. I mean,
Well, and I pulled it, so if you want to address it now.
I'm going to turn that one over to Sarah because she's going to address
Okay.
that one. It's
Yeah,
a pretty
because-
simple answer.
Yeah, because it's in here.
Good evening, Sarah Stone, Deputy Director for Business Solutions and Engineering for Utilities. So the current authorized officers are Kevin Ingalls and Christine Hart in the Finance Department. And then because Corpta, who issued the loan, had done a loan with Public Works back in 2023, they pulled in the authorized officers from Public Works. So that was Tim Hose and a employee that's no longer with Public Works. So we would like to amend it to add Pieter and myself, as we are the administrators of the Water Enterprise Fund, and we would remove the Public Works members that are assigned in the loan currently.
But finance would still remain as
Finance
for
would
an
remain.
oversight
That's
type of
correct.
thing. Okay, well, that answers one of those two. So it was in this pack, so that's why I'm asking, so.
Yeah, it's because we have the two loans, the direct loan and the SRF loan, so that's why we
Okay,
have that.
okay, perfect. Those answer my questions.
Thank you, Member Wright. The authorized officers are part of the legalese within this document, so, perfect. Any further questions on this item? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So I don't know if you probably can answer this question. In changing what we're spending the loan money on, does that create any liability for us in the fact that we originally took out the loan to fix the lead pipes, correct? But now if we're changing it, that doesn't create a problem, right?
It does not. So it has gone through the same environmental review, the same historic review from the State Historic Preservation Society, and then through CDPHE as well, that reviewed the initial request for the loan. And we're assigning it to the distribution system, which, you know, also is a part with this lead service lines, we're addressing distribution system needs. So as we made the request to the state revolving fund, administrators, they said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense that you would use it on the distribution system.
Okay, thank you. And on the WIFIA loan, do we also only pay interest on it as we take money out, or because we closed on the loan, we're paying interest on all of it?
That's correct. With the SRF loan, we are paying interest immediately. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like, because that's a really good point, that's a key point here. On the SRF and the bipartisan infrastructure law money, we have closed the loan, they've issued it to us, we pay interest on that full amount right out of the gate. What's unique and nice about WIFIA is we have closed the loan and the money is available, however, we're not paying interest on it until we draw on that. And so what we've done is we've utilized cash, other funding sources to push out that draw as far as possible to minimize the amount of time that we're paying interest on that money. And that's the two differences between these two funding sources. We have the funding allocated with more than enough projects that need to be done, but we're timing how we're using that money in a way to minimize the interest payment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions on this item?
I have one more, please. I'm
Member
sorry.
Wright, go ahead.
As you're reminding us of WIFIA and those watching at home, can you remind us approximately what the interest rate is on those WIFIAs? Because I know it's real low.
So the WIFIAs are at 2.89 and 2.95, I believe.
And that's the big reason we do not return this money. We utilize the money.
I'm sorry, say that again, I'm sorry.
This is why we do not return that money. We utilize it because that interest rate.
Yeah, because it's we have really good interest rates, and our corp to loans are 3.5. So all of this is really low interest loan money, which is what's good for us from a long-term financial plan.
Exactly. Great. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right, can I get a motion to approve 9A4?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Member Wright and Member Russell. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring. Aye. Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, moving on to 9A7. I believe we already had this answered, but this was the amendment to the Colorado 2024 Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority water loan specific to authorized officers. Any further questions on this, Member Wright?
No, thank you.
All right, could I get a motion to approve 9A7?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Member Wright. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring. Aye. Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, this last one is for Director Van Ryn. This is 9A8, amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Englewood Public Schools. Director Van Ryn, I think we have a question regarding the antennas. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Guess it's our show tonight, huh? Number one, did the school board vote on this?
So the way my understanding is, and I would defer to the city attorney on this for a little bit of support, is that when the IGA is negotiated and agreed upon, then both respective entities will have their boards or councils approve that IGA together.
I'm sorry, the city manager was talking to me about this item and I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat that?
So, go ahead.
Did the school board vote to approve this? Did it go through the school board?
That I don't know. Do you know, Sean?
Superintendent Polson indicated to me that it was going to the school board after it came to city council.
Okay. All right. And I forgot, my other questions. Do you know if the parents have been informed about this, or is there a communication about this? I know a lot of people are, concerned about RF and it being around their children. So I think it's our responsibility to ask about it and how the communication is going to go out.
So this is where we rely on the school district to provide the notification that they provide through this process. So here's what this antenna is. So this is a collection antenna. So the RF is actually its radio frequency. It's out there already, it's all around us, and it's the radio frequency signals that are being sent by the meters, the small signals. This collects that information from each one of those signals, and then what it sends out is essentially equivalent to a cell phone call. And so what it does is it dials from that antenna where it's collected all that information from each one of those individual meters, and then it calls to the main central mainframe here at the city, and then transmits all that information via basically a cell phone call. That's how it works.
Okay, so this would lead to my next question. What information? So it'd be address, customer ID, name, that type of information?
It's a meter usage. So you know how right now we drive down the street and we use a little signal from the car that pulls a block worth of meters information off of the radio feeds. Mm-hmm. Well, this replaces the car and puts an antenna on a couple locations. This is what advanced metering infrastructure does. Is it takes away from the street by street collection of information and does it from these larger zones where it can pick up that signal from a much farther location, a much broader location.
So is it going from the antennas to the city, or is it going to Cogsdale?
It comes into our billing system. So it comes into our meter collection system, which then informs our billing system. So it goes from the meter to the collection tower, and then called in to where we then collect our meter read data, which then interfaces with our billing system, which then provides the usage so that we can then charge for the usage. And Sarah's getting up here because I'm sure she has a better answer.
So as far as the data that's transmitted, it is the ERT number, the meter number, so an inventory number that assigns it to an account. So there's not addresses or names or anything like that. And then it's also the water consumption that is read from the meter. So it's the meter read, which there's dials on the meter. So it takes that new read and sends it to us. So where that goes is into a file, and then our billing staff imports that file into Cogsdale.
Okay, and I'm asking for cybersecurity or security reasons because there's real threats of that all the time too. So the concern is how safe is it from someone going to a meter doing that where it could be hacked compared to an antenna? And those are my questions with that. So there's, two things that people's concerns about RF and then concerns about cybersecurity. And those are my two main concerns, I guess.
Yeah, so hopefully on the RF, it's the same kind of signal that's being sent out. We just collect, instead of collecting it street by street with a truck and a signal collector, it's now one accumulator collector on top of the roof of these two locations. As far as the cybersecurity piece goes, it's limited information in terms of it's the meter identifier and then the usage information, and then that gets transitioned. Now, with everything, we are always trying to protect ourselves from ways that people are trying to hack into not just our meter information, but our process systems at the plants, and all those kinds of things that you read across the U.S. is it's an area of vulnerability for water utilities across the U.S. and it is a priority for us that we are both working on at South Platte Renew and at the Englewood Allen plant and through utilities to continually stay ahead of those people who are trying to do bad things.
So if I understand, someone would have to break into the mainframe, have to get customer numbers, cross and everything else to be able to get private information on somebody. So it's not from that antenna to Cogsdale immediately. It's going to take a lot of work, and that's what I'm needing to
Yes,
reassure people.
I would say that that's, you know, an appropriate way to interpret it.
Layman's.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Member Russell.
Thank you. So while you're here, the antennas, once they go up, will you be able to get all the information you need off of those antennas?
Right now, the two identified locations where we need those antennas is enough to provide coverage for the city. These antennas also are not inconsistent with other types of antennas that are on the school roof. So it's not like they're consistent with other kinds of antennas that you see on these roofs, which I think is why the school district is understanding, you know, that it makes sense for us to be able to put them there. So this, yep, and so Sarah's also got another better
Okay.
answer.
So I do want to clarify how many antennas. There are 2 that are going up on the schools, but there are 7 already in place. They're currently on city facilities, and then that gives us 100% coverage of the city for meter reading.
Okay. I won't ask you a lot of questions, but my water bill came today and it missed my water again. So, thank you.
As we have stated before, we are happy to continue to look into this and apologize for the issues.
When the new antenna is up, then it'll fix it, right?
City Manager Lewis, you have an item.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to make council aware that we, today, were notified of one change that we were not able to get out to you. I apologize for that. But it is regarding the printing of those community message board signs. In exchange for the school district letting us use their property to do this, since we have the large format plotters, we are taking responsibility of printing their signs. And we're already out there putting our own up, so it kind of makes sense for us to do that. And so now in the responsibilities under page 2 of the amendment, the Englewood School District is responsible for creating print-ready files as opposed to for creating and printing messaging, if that makes sense. So you will see that, if it's okay with you, in your second reading, that will be corrected. But if you can note that we're making that, I'm asking you to make that amendment tonight, and we'll get that corrected. I apologize for that.
Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis. Okay, so the responsibilities are just changing. It's just the file that they're providing.
Correct. We will do their printing and installing at the same time we're doing our own printing and installing. And then they just need to always get us a print-ready file that we will then print on our large format
Okay.
plotters.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis. Member Wright, you have another question on this?
Yeah, well, my question is, I guess my concern, had I not pulled this item, would have we been told, had we, before we voted on this on consent?
Yes, you would have. We needed to make that announcement anyway. Thank you.
All right. All right, with that, any further questions? If not, can I get a motion to approve with a friendly amendment, the change that City Manager Lewis specified?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang. Aye. Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter and Sarah, for all the answers to the questions. So, moving on to no public hearing items for tonight. We are moving on to 11A1. This is the approval of ordinance of first reading for the plan unit development of 401 Englewood Parkway, the Kimco development. We have Mr. Will Charles, our planner, here for any further updates. And I did see that we have some further information here at the dais. So, Mr. Charles, when you are ready.
Yeah, thank you. Not a lot to add tonight. I just wanted to make mention of the handout you have before you. It just lists the conditions that were presented by Planning Commission, and then the 2 portions that were talked about during the public hearing. So one being that hotel parking discussion, as well as the 2 affordable housing requirements that are two of the conditions currently in the proposed conditions. And so there's a applicant proposed language in there for that as well. But beyond that, I'm here tonight. Members of our Public Works Department are here tonight, and then members from the applicant team are here as well if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. It's going to take me a minute to read through the wording here, but any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
So these conditions are part of the ordinance except for the two changes that we discussed previously.
Correct. So everything.
The amendments would be changing those conditions.
Correct. So the ordinance has everything up to the bolded point at the bottom of page
Got
2.
it. Yep. Very good.
Any further questions from members of council? And I'll give everyone a minute here just because. Go ahead, Member Russell.
So why did these changes get made between?
Mr. Charles, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, so these are just 2 points that were made at the public hearing before you guys 2 weeks ago. So we just put them there so you guys would know that those were there. These aren't, necessarily, exact conditional language or anything like that. It was just to make sure those were in the record as far as being discussed.
Go ahead, Member Wright.
So if I understand, this was in the pack from the 3rd, you're just highlighting what was in the pack.
Yeah, so everything up until the end of page 2 was in the packet. Then there are the portions that were discussed at the public hearing. So the first one being the hotel parking. So there was a discussion about reverting that back to what's currently in the code.
Okay.
And then there was also discussion about the EDDA's affordable housing request, as well as the one made by Planning and Zoning Commission. And so, potentially combining those into one requirement.
And Kimco's agreeing here, because I see some heads kind of saying no, shaking their heads.
I can let them come up.
Yeah, please confirm with them.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Once again, Carolyn White, Land Use Counsel for the applicant, Kimco. And maybe just to put a little clarification on that, the 2 questions or issues that arose at the last hearing were, 1, would you be willing to, instead of proposing reduced hotel parking spaces for your PUD, would you be willing to instead default to the city's normal standard? And so one of the conditions that we worked with staff to craft addresses that issue and says, we're going to delete the 0.5 parking spaces per hotel room and default instead to the city standard. And the other question that you asked was, hey, you've got 2 recommended conditions here about affordable housing. You've got one from the Planning Commission that says you agree to do whatever's in place at the time of building permit, and you've got another one from the EDDA, which is really more aspirational, that says we need housing, we want you to do some things, here's some ideas. And so the mayor asked, those 2 appear to be in conflict. And what is the condition that you've agreed to with respect to affordable housing? So the language that Mr. Charles was just referring to was our proposal to try to meld those 2 conditions into a single one that is clear and enforceable in terms of what we are agreeing to and what you are requesting us to agree to on affordable housing. And it says that Kimco will comply with whatever rules are in place at the time of building permit that are coming out of the task force process that's in place right now. And I'll just mention as a matter of procedure, if you elected to replace that condition as proposed, the ordinance that's in your packet would need to be amended because it doesn't read that way today. Did that answer the question? Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to that.
Member Russell, go ahead.
Did that agreement happen during the public hearing, or did that agreement happen after the public hearing between you and staff?
Oh, I don't think there is any agreement. I think this is our proposal of how the condition should read to address the issues that arose at the public hearing. I wouldn't say anyone's agreed on anything. You all are the decision makers on that.
Okay, but I mean, what I'm looking for is, did this come about after the public hearing, or did it come about at the public hearing? Because I believe it creates a problem if it came about after the public hearing. When we closed the public hearing, it was closed.
I hear what you're saying. The language that is in the packet that Mr. Charles just referenced, that I just referenced, We drafted after the public hearing, because we heard your concerns at the public hearing, and then submitted it to staff to ask them to include it in the packet for tonight. So it has been public as long as everything else in the packet has been public, I think, as of Friday.
Okay, thank you. My next question is for the city attorney. We've had a public hearing that was based on all the testimony we heard that night. Now there's been a change after the fact. What do we do with that?
So the public hearing is for you to take fact and argument and then consider it in making your final decision tonight. So the information submitted to you is not new fact or testimony, but rather a potential option that City Council could choose to take in acting upon the information presented to the public hearing. So as far as our code regarding quasi-judicial hearings, we are compliant with what's been produced in the packet.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Member Prang.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. So the proposed language from Kimco in response to the affordability question would replace the condition 1 and 4A, correct? Okay. And I guess I do have a follow-up question, maybe for the city attorney. Are we, I don't know how to ask this in a PC kind of way, so I'm just gonna ask it and fumble through it. Are we creating any kind of loopholes, if you will, with the language which apply uniformly throughout the city? Are there any instances where the affordability policies that we might implement would potentially impact one circumstance or situation within the city and not all? I don't know if I'm asking that correctly, but.
Yeah, so, right now, there is not an affordability requirement in the code currently. So anything, these conditions were written in this way with the intent of saying, when the Affordable Housing Task Force proposal comes before this council, and whatever you choose to adopt, that would be the regulations for that. So currently, there's not anything in the code as far as a tangible requirement that you have to do a certain level of affordability.
Okay. And so Kimco, I guess I maybe have a question for you. Is your intention in wording it this way just to assure that you're getting fair treatment across the city? Okay. Perfect. And then I have one more question, maybe for Will. I just want to make sure, has there been a level of analysis, and I hope I'm not stepping outside of the scope of what I can and can't ask tonight.
You're good right now. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
My first round on one of these. So was there an analysis at any point so were we to not accept the proposed language from Kimco to do the replacements, and we wanted to just stick with the original conditions that were set forth by P&Z and EDDA. I guess my question is, has there been any analysis between what EDDA was aspiring to? Thank you for the word aspiration earlier. And what the recommendations are in the Affordable Housing Task Force report? Were we to adopt that, would there be any conflict between those recommendations if we adopt, wholeheartedly what's recommended in their report and what the EDDA is wanting to see aspirationally?
Yeah, I think I understand the question, so let me know if I don't answer it. But the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is, I believe, condition number 1 on there, is very similar to the language proposed by the applicant. So it says, whatever the requirements are at the time of building permits, that's what we're going to do. The EDDA's requirement has a specific number, which is, I think, 10% in there. So that's what that's what theirs would say, is do the 10%. I would say that the EDDA's is a little soft on some of the language terms in there. So they're more, kind of goals and things like that rather than a mandate. But that's kind of the main difference between those two, is one is an exact number, whereas one is do what's going to be required by the city.
Will, do you
in terms of
mind me
building
adding
permit.
to that as well? So the difference also was planning and zoning was looking at from the Affordable Housing Task Force recommendations. So they were looking, and this is the question that I brought up during the public hearing. When I think of affordable housing, I think 30 to 80% AMI, right? The DDA did not have that specification. They talked workforce housing, which to me is 80 to 120%. So basically the clarity that is potentially being proposed tonight is just saying that they will take or what is in place at that point in terms of affordable or whatever, what's the way that they worded it?
Have building permit.
Yeah, at the time of permit, that is what they will take into consideration. So that was the reason for my question. One was talking about affordable housing, the other was talking about workforce housing. And so I wanted to see which one was the applicant really striving for, so.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for all of your answers.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I do think Member Prang makes a reasonable point about the apply uniformly throughout the city. There's almost, in terms of our zoning codes, there's not a lot that applies uniformly. Everything is very specific to different areas. So I get the intention, but I do wonder if we say created a housing rule that only applied to zone districts where apartments were allowed or something like that, or affordable requirement specifically for the EDDA boundaries. I don't know, I have no idea what's going to come out of that, but the thought that it would, they potentially wouldn't be applicable because there was some restriction on it. Does that, City Attorney, does that make sense as a potential concern there? Or is uniformly just mean we're doing it for apartments, every apartment has to do it kind of thing?
I'm sorry, my computer's frozen up and I
No
can't scroll to that. Could you give me the page of the packet that's on, and perhaps I can jump to it that way?
I'm looking at the handout.
It's the handout that we
Oh.
received tonight, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
What did you say, Member Prank?
Oh, Noonan Camp.
Or Noonan Camp?
It's also. Member Noonan Camp, you're just saying it was at the very end of that handout, or was it also within the packet?
It's in the packet. It's the page right after the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Noonan Camp.
I'm inclined to just strike the DDA's requirement and stick with the planning and zoning, because that, that's only heard at the public hearing, and I think it's a sufficient, I think it's driving at the same thing, but.
Right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Noonan Camp.
I have a question for the applicant. When do you expect the first building permit to be submitted, if this project is approved? Can you turn your mic on, please?
Okay, and for the record, Mark Rickards with Kimco. We would be looking to find a JV partner this year and get into design development in 2026. I would hope that towards the end of 2026, we could pull a permit. It's not certain. That would be probably the earliest.
That's helpful, thank you.
Might I just have a moment to address at least what we intended with that business uniformly language? As was pointed out, the language that was proposed in the letter from the EDDA, I called it aspirational. It wasn't written as a condition of approval. It wasn't written as a thou shalt, right, which is how conditions of approval are written, and so it wasn't written in an enforceable way. The way that recommendation from the EDDA got translated into your ordinance is written as a thou shalt. And as written, this thou shalt provide 10%, between 80 and 120%, this is not what Kimco has agreed to. And I also believe that if you only applied this requirement just to this one project and not as a uniformly legislatively adopted requirement that you adopt as a citywide policy that's applicable to all new projects, there would be some legal questions associated with that. And so what I was trying to avoid was just to say, hey, we absolutely agree to do whatever it is that you decide is the policy for everyone. But as to imposing this specific requirement with these numbers on this project, that is not what we had understood the recommendation was, and that is not what Kimco agrees to. So that's what the uniformly was meant to be. I'm meaning a legislatively adopted policy that's applicable to all new projects, not a exaction that's applicable only to this project.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. White. Go ahead, Member Nunekamp.
I have a question for the city attorney. Sorry, we're asking a lot of you tonight. Am I able to ask any questions about the fee in lieu that we heard in public comment, or is that outside the scope?
We should not be taking any new facts or evidence at this time after the close of the public hearing. So if there was information presented in the public hearing.
Am I able to confirm how the fee in lieu is calculated?
Yes, it's already, that information's already documented. So if you have some questions to follow up, I think that's fine.
Okay. Let me know if I'm out of order here. This question is for staff. Looking at the fee in lieu information that's in the packet, it does say that it's based on the near-term needs of the area for the multimodal projects. Can you just let us know why it's calculated on the near-term and not the long-term plan? And this might be for Public Works.
Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works. Thank you for the question. Yes, so the question is based on what is shown as short-term in the multimodal study, which totals $560,000 over multiple parcels. As mentioned in the packet, it's then divided by the amount of traffic generated and taking into consideration the frontage. The reason why it's the short-term versus the long-term, or the long-term envisions a larger scale transition through the corridor, well outside this parcel, envisioning potentially part of the city center redevelopment, and are substantial changes that are not fully defined in cost, scope, and time frame, where the short term are defined in scope, cost, and time frame, and that's why the short term were the improvements used to calculate that fee.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
All right. Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. While we have Director Rochelle up here, I believe I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Having everyone getting their steps in today. While the traffic impact study was going on and those speed cushions
Yes,
were
ma'am.
decided that were needed, was Denver Fire EMS consulted? Floyd and that whole area has undergone a whole lot of changes that have impacted them and the way that they have to route, the way they drive.
Right.
If there are speed cushions, and I know there's cutouts for them, but it does impact them and their response times. So in these discussions on adding those speed cushions, because they have to route the way to responses, especially in that area, were they included in the discussions?
My understanding is that they were included from the fire marshal side on the city. As you noted, the speed cushions do have brakes in them to align with the wheelbase for a fire truck, which is substantially wider than the average pedestrian vehicle. So my vehicle, your vehicle, would not be able to get both sets of tires through those brakes, thereby the device acting as a appropriate traffic calming, where Denver Fire and fire trucks should be able to go through without slowing down. They may slow down because there'll be signage and there's some striping that goes in, but it should not impact response times.
Do you know, because I know that response time has been an issue and Member Ward may know these times better than I do, but with all those changes over there, do you know what impact it has had on the response time?
Are you
Actually,
referring?
point of order, Member Wright, is this part of the PUD?
Well, it is because you're adding speed cushions and you're adding traffic. and
Speed
you're-
cushions on Cherokee.
Yes,
Correct, yes,
and then-
sorry about
And then
that.
you're adding additional housing units over there would be additional calls. So
You're-
yes, everything's impacted.
Yeah, you're right, Member Wright, for some reason I had Lottie and Floyd on my mind, so I wasn't thinking about the speed cushions on Cherokee. You're right, go ahead, sorry, Director Rochelle.
No, thank you for the question. To my knowledge, we don't have speed cushions elsewhere in the city. I'm not aware of any impacts to response times at this moment, and do not have the data if you're referring to the location to the south where we did a narrowing of the roadway.
Okay, so, but they used to travel along Floyd a lot, which has been impacted, and they don't do that anymore. Do you know how much the response time hasn't been impacted in getting to those areas currently? In that whole neighborhood that would be impacted?
Sure, I'm afraid I do not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
I do. I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
While I have you, I'm sorry. Okay, one more time. So, on the 3rd, there was a discussion about the drainage easement, and I had asked some questions.
Point of order. This is just a question of curiosity, but how is this not getting new testimony?
It's not, it's clarification. If I could ask my question, you would.
I believe I don't believe this is allowed.
City Attorney Niles,
So we received conflicting information from the city during the hearing on Monday. I would like to get clarification on which we received.
But we closed the public
What
hearing.
was in the packet or what we received? Because it bears an awful lot on what happens tonight regarding the drainage easement and how it will be routed, or will it go through the property?
Go ahead, City Attorney Niles. I think that was answered during the public hearing, though.
Well, I'll repeat that new facts should not be entered into evidence tonight. However, Director Rochelle is nodding that was entered into part of the record during the public hearing. So I think if there's a clarification as to what was right and what wasn't previously presented, I think you're fine. But if it is brand new information, then Councilmember Anderson is correct that it should not be presented tonight.
Go ahead, Director Rochelle, if you can clarify what was discussed during the public hearing.
Yeah, so I was present at the public hearing. Deputy Director Hoos answered a question regarding the drainage. So to clarify, the development project will be adding additional 30 feet of easement through their project. This is in addition to the existing 40-foot easement that encumbers the 12 by 18-foot box culvert that's conveying Little Dry Creek today through the property. It's currently under a building. This project will open it up. We will not have a building on top of the pipe, and will gain 30 foot of easement, 15 feet on each side per the development, which is in your packet. There was also a question about upsizing the pipe, and we're at the moment continuing to work with Mile High Flood District to understand what those flows will look like, so we know if, one, the pipe needs to be upsized. We're looking at other alternatives upstream, and then depending on that information, there are opportunities to install with a parallel pipe around this development that would go up up Cherokee to the north, turn left and go west around the back of the development, and then rejoin adjacent to the existing pipe all the way over to Daylight by Santa Fe in that area. So there's no plan at the moment to upsize the pipe. We don't have the number to know what the amount of water coming through there will be based on Mile High. We have some preliminary information and we know it's a larger number, but we're looking at all alternatives. And there's no proposal to upsize the pipe because, again, we don't know the target we're aiming for just yet. That information is to come down the road.
So potentially in the future, we could end up with 2 pipes.
Correct. Not through this site. It would be only 1 pipe through this site, the existing pipe today. There could be an opportunity to slightly upsize it if needed. A second pipe would go around this site.
Okay, and that's where we conflicted last time and not that information, and that's what I was trying to clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Wright. So City Attorney Niles, I just have a question just regarding the language regarding the EDDA requirements. So as a council, we do have the ability, going back to Ms. White's point, because I'm looking at the wording here, it says dedicate up to 10% of the residential units as affordable housing for those earning between 80 and 120%. City Council can take that if we so choose to, we can go ahead and move forward with that as part of our means of approval tonight.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Looking to see if there's anything else regarding this wording that I'm looking at. Went back and looked at the presentation from 2 weeks back. I think that suffices. Any further questions on any items? Seems like there was quite a bit there, so. All right, if not, can I get a motion to approve CB9?
Move to approve CB9.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Mayor Pro Tem, is there anything you want to add, or?
Well, I was wanting to propose an amendment to the conditions here. Is that acceptable?
It is. I was wondering, I'm still thinking through it right now. So go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, in light of the, just question mark about the new language that was drafted between staff and the applicant, I would propose just striking 4A and leaving 1 in place and not adopting that new language. So I move to strike 4A.
I'll second that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And so we are striking, or the amendment is to strike 4A from the list of conditions. All right. Any further comments on this? Or does anybody need any clarification on that item? All right. Actually, I'll make a comment. I am going to oppose the amendment. I think I personally just want to keep it in. I can understand. I can understand the fact that it may contradict condition 1, but with the DDA asking to encourage dedicating up to 10% of the monthly rents affordable at 80 to 120, I'm going to voice to keep that in here as part of the conditions. So I will be voting against the amendment. And with that, go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
I just have a question. Is there anything by leaving them both in that prohibits the applicant from needing to meet 4A and any additional?
City Attorney Nels, is there?
If I understand your question correctly, they're not mutually exclusive. So they do provide, I mean, they're on the same topic, but they don't require the exact same thing. So you can leave them both in.
And just one follow-up question. If we were to leave them both in now, can they be changed at a later date? What's hard is that we don't have the final recommendations, and so we're in kind of a hypothetical situation.
Yes, it would be possible to change it at a later date. It's not ideal, but it certainly would be possible, especially if both the city and the applicant agree on a proposed change. I think I just got kicked off. We can make modifications later.
That's helpful, thank you.
Go ahead, Member Ward.
I support the proposed change. I don't think it's healthy to adopt an ordinance that has provisions in it that can be viewed as confusing, unclear, or even at the risk of disagreeing with the city attorney, contradictory. I just think if we're putting in language in this PUD that says that the applicant shall meet a standard that we don't intend to enforce, we're sending the wrong message to the community. So I'm going to support the amendment.
Thank you, Member Ward. Thank you, Member Ward. Mayor Pro Tem.
I appreciate the DDA's thoughtfulness behind this and wanting to provide some, workforce housing for the area. But I don't think this has got this kind of requirement has got the level of vetting that we would really need for something like that. If we're going to adopt an affordable housing ordinance, we're going to have to go through a whole process where we'll probably have to hire a consultant, make sure the numbers pencil, and projects will actually get built. There's no fee in lieu opportunity here. If somebody's not an affordable housing developer, what are the chances that this gets built? I think this is very likely a deal killer. And I don't want to do that to them. If we're going to have a discussion, let's have a longer discussion and make the same rules apply to everybody. And that's what number one does. So I think we should keep number one and vet it very carefully before we lay that requirement on somebody.
Perfect. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, and Member Ward speaking to it. Okay, I will be in support after looking at the recommendation within the packet itself or the document that we got tonight. And looking back at 2 weeks, they are different. So I do see where it's gonna provide much more confusion than I had hoped. So I will be supporting the amendment. Member Noonan-Camp, go ahead.
I just want to ask a point of clarification. I think if the applicant thought it was going to be a financial killer, they wouldn't have agreed to it as a condition, or put it in had it in the language. And I just wonder, we didn't hear any feedback that they thought that maybe would be a killer.
So the way that I'm understanding Member Noonan-Camp, if I'm looking at the packet from 2 weeks back,
Because it's new.
it was
I see.
not, it stated, 2 weeks back, it said encourage dedicating
Yeah.
up to 10% of the units. What we received tonight says shall provide 10%. So it is contradictory and saying which is what the applicant agreed to, is where it's providing a little bit of confusion for me, so.
I understand. I think my ask is that right now, if we remove this, there will be no requirement for any affordability until we vote on something. And so this, I think, puts the onus on the council to actually pass something within the next year. And so I hope that we're taking that seriously.
Correct. Thank you very much, Member Noonan-Camp. That's something that's on my mind as well. All right, so we are going to vote on the amendment. We have a first and a second to remove condition 4. Yes, we are removing condition 4A. All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang. Aye. Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right. Anything else, members of council? Go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
Oh, I'll cede to the Mayor Pro Tem if you want to finish your list.
I was just going to do this other amendment unless you wanted to do it.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I make a motion to amend to strike the proposed parking requirement of 0.5 spaces per hotel room and instead default to the parking regulations for hotel parking listed in table 2.1.
All right, thank you,
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Are there any questions regarding that amendment? Go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
I'll give a comment, and I know that Member Ward voiced a strong opinion during the public hearing, but I'm not convinced that that opinion is held by all of council, and so I do think we should have a conversation through this amendment to decide if we think what is best for the community in the area, which is the responsibility we have tonight on assessing what is the best thing what zoning does this area need for the community. My concern about reverting back to the standard parking is that it continues to create a huge asphalt area in that zoning area or on the property. I think we could have more room if we reduce the number of hotel parking spaces for more greenery and things that are nice not only to live near and look at, but also better for the environment. And I'm not convinced that in this day and age, with so many people using ride shares, that we need an entire spot for every single hotel room. I think a half spot is a reasonable accommodation, especially that close to the light rail. So I would like to see this go back to the half spot.
All right. Any further comments? I'll go Member Prang and then Member Wright.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I tend to disagree. In the design that was presented and kind of some of the conceptual pictures shown, I don't see a huge asphalt area in that. And while I do think that we are slowly as a society moving in the direction of potential Ubers and ride shares and things like that to get to a hotel, most often people need parking when they go to a hotel. And so I think that reverting to what's originally in code is appropriate. I have concerns of, if we continue to develop and flourish as a city and hopefully create, events around the city that are going to be big draws to people, I think about occupancy of the hotel And I understand, you know, most often it's not gonna be at 100% occupancy, but our goal is to get it there, right? And to have a vibrant city with lots of events going on where we're making a draw, and hopefully that hotel is more fully occupied. And I wanna make sure that we don't run into situations where we're concerned about particular times of the year where we might need some sort of overflow parking situation to be able to accommodate people that are coming to that hotel.
Member Wright.
Thank you. I agree with Member Prang. We have Craig Hospital that they beg for a hotel for their patients' families to stay out. We are right on 285, which is a perfect gateway for people that want to go to the mountains and ski and use their places, the mountains during the summer and the winter. You have conventions if you get the right hotel. You have weddings, you have bar mitzvahs, you have events, and it's just not the rooms you're looking at. It's the events that are going on in the right hotel. So I agree, it's not a half space. Yes, those hotel rooms also, you know, you have Galentine where a bunch of gals may have a couple of cars, you know, in one room, or you may have one business person that is using light rail and stuff. So I agree. I do not support this at this time. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I actually would prefer not to make this amendment, leave it at 0.5. I mean, it's fun to speculate as city council about how many spaces something might need. I don't know how, you know, how I would decide that. I think if they did partner up with a national hotel chain, whoever operates that hotel would likely do an intense study to figure out how many parking spaces they would need. And the 0.5 allows them a little flexibility to reduce that, possibly making it buildable on the site. That's one of the biggest challenges with the site, is that we don't know if, you know, if what kind of hotel they're going to get and if it's actually going to be buildable within the dimensions on the site. So I would prefer to, I made the amendment. My sense from council was and still is that maybe this could potentially be a deal killer for council, and it obviously wasn't a deal killer for the applicant. So I'm happy to support it in this case if it gets it over the line. But I do agree in principle that we shouldn't go messing with this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I agree as well. I think this is just getting over the finish line. I would be in favor of less parking spaces and provide that flexibility, but knowing that my preference is to get this built, I will be in favor of this amendment. So with that, can we please vote on striking the 0.5 spaces per hotel room? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question? Where is this gonna go in the ordinance? Is it gonna go right under the number 6, the drainage report?
It looks like it's table 2.1, so.
This is one of the conditions of PUD approval that they were requesting, was a modification to parking. So we're removing that parking modification from the PUD designation itself, which then reverts the parking requirement to the underlying zoning.
which
Okay,
is
so it
one
won't even
space.
be in here because it'll go back to
Correct.
underlying. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, City Clerk, can you please take the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Nay.
Member Nunnenkamp,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward.
I'm sorry, City Clerk, can we have some clarification on what specifically we're voting on? Because I believe based on the votes that have come in so far, there may be some confusion.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend, to strike the parking, revert back to the 0.5 spaces per hotel room.
No.
So I would be a vote for, according to what you just said, 0.5 spaces per room. But I think what we're
No,
doing
that's-
is we're removing.
We're removing the 0.5.
Removing the 0.5 and going back to table 2.1.
Correct.
Which would be a minimum requirement of 0.75 per room based on administrative approval, down from 1 per room. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, Member Ward, you have it right. So go ahead, Member Nunnenkamp.
sorry, Member Anderson, can you restate your amendment?
It's the language at the bottom of page 2 of the handout. I just read it off of there. It's removing the 0.5, so it would go up, the parking requirement would go up to 0.75 or 1.
Thank you. Aye.
Let's start over. I just want to make it clean. So this is a motion to amend, to remove, are we amending it to remove
Correct,
the 0.5
correct.
and reverting?
To the underlying zoning,
Okay,
parking requirement.
okay, all right, we're good. I'm going to start over. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Nay.
Member Nunnenkamp?
No.
Member Prang?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Member Ward?
Aye.
Member Wright?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
All right, thank you. Any further amendments? All right, can I?
Wait, Mayor, I think I may have one more
Of course you do,
amendment.
Mayor Pro Tem. What else you have?
I just saw on one, condition number 1, it says adopted by Englewood Council or recommended by the Affordable Housing Task Force. That seems confusing to make it something that was recommended,
Yeah.
a requirement. So I move to strike or recommended by the Affordable Housing Task Force.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second on that?
Second.
So
All right,
would you
that's-
repeat that?
Yeah, this is condition 1 on what we received tonight. So the last part of number 1 says adopted by Englewood City Council or recommended by Affordable Housing Task Force. Mayor Pro Tem is asking to strike the or recommended by the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a first from Mayor Pro Tem, a second from Member Ward. Any comments on this? I'll make a quick comment. I will be in support of that. I do think that that is a little bit confusing, especially since we've already received a recommendation. And City Council will be speaking about those recommendations here at a given date. So I will be in support of striking that from the record. All right, and with that, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Prang?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Member Ward?
Aye.
Member Wright?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, thank you. Any further amendments? All right, do I need to get a motion to approve as amended? Or are we already? Motion's been made, all right, so I think we're set. All right, can we, well, any further comments before we vote?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this evening, and the reason is because we have review criteria in our code, section 1625C. The review criteria were analyzed by staff. They provided a report in the memo and also at the presentation during the public hearing. But I believe that they made a compelling case that this meets the required criteria for the PUD and will therefore be supporting this.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Prang.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not here for the public hearing, so I just wanted to comment on my adoration for this project. I think it's beautiful. I really like the concept that you're building on of the transition between our single-family housing neighborhoods to our more commercial districts and the traffic thoroughfares. I think that's a beautiful concept to continue to build on. I love the landscaping in it, and I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I believe, from what I am learning to understand, it meets the criteria for a PUD. I would love in the design process for you to figure out a first floor retail something somewhere in the mix of this, but largely just a strong supporter of the project as a whole. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kimco team, for all your work on this and for the partnership with the city to potentially bring this project to bear. So just appreciate all the work that you have put into this. Thank you very much for the citizen engagement on this as well and bringing in the neighborhoods. So I will be in support of this, and as our members stated, it does conform to the requirements of the PUD, so appreciate it. Member Russell, I saw you laying. I think you're next, and then Member Wright.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the work that Kimco has done on this, and I do like the fact that it is medium size, but I have some huge concerns about this in the fact that this council has been working with city staff about the redevelopment of city center for years. And we've been looking to put in high-density housing. And now this is going to be downsized. There will be no retail here because we're changing the zoning to a planned unit development, and it will be residential. We are taking a property right now that is already residential, and already retail, and turning it into residential. I understand that there are huge problems that you have, and I believe those problems are council's fault, because we're not addressing the problems in this city. The problems in this city involve massive crime, and that's why the anchor store moved out. That's why the anchor store moved out in the property catacorner across the street. And until this council quits allowing this whole area to be piecemealed together when we already have a plan, this is not wise. We need to leave it retail, but we also need to help the people in the retail sections so they can make the retail survive. I cannot support this because we are going to put in a sea of humanity with no retail at all. And that is going to create a nightmare for the city of Englewood. Thank you.
Member Wright?
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that's put all the work into it, including Kimco, the attorneys, staff. I know where several Kimco properties are. They're well kept. They're very nice. Retail properties and rental properties. Part of my concern is all of the tax revenue properties are over in Sheridan, just across Santa Fe. And we are losing what tax base we could potentially be making. One of my biggest concerns is a hotel. I would absolutely love to see a hotel here, maybe some retail underneath that so that we have a tax revenue coming in. And in this, there's no guarantee. We will talk to some major chains and see what we could do, and there's no guarantees in that. And if it doesn't happen, then we'll build more residential. I do have concerns with that. I have no concerns that the property will not be, kept correctly and kept nice, because I've seen your properties. But I do have concerns on not having tax revenue brought here. I have concerns with the businesses that are there currently that will be displaced. I believe you spoke to the gentleman with Ritual Haunted House the evening when he was here 2 weeks ago. And the other businesses that, love it in that area. Do they make you a lot of money? I don't know. It's not my business. It's not council's business. It's between you and them. But those are the people that want to stay in the area and stuff. I do appreciate the work and your willingness and what you're wanting to do and wanting to just kind of ebb and flow with things to make it right. And I do appreciate that. So I myself would like more concrete. Yes, we do have a hotel. This is what's going to happen. But thank you for everything you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to be successful in everything you do. I appreciate everything you've done everywhere. So,
Member Ward.
I just have to point out that I do get concerned when I hear some of my peers speak in such black and white terms. There is no retail anywhere near there. It's just not true. It's blocks away from two of our largest retailers, King Soopers on one side and Walmart on the other. There are plenty of places for people to buy groceries there. They have two choices. If they don't like Walmart, they can go to King Soopers, and likewise, and both of them are within walking distance. We don't disclose specific tax holder accounts, but I would suspect that both of those two stores are two of our largest taxpayers in the city, retail base. So not all of the retail is in Sheridan. We have retail here, and I agree with the principle that says that, you know, sort of if you bring the people, the retail follows. This is a place where density fits, and I also want to point out that the developer isn't requesting an increase in density allowed there. They're actually, the reason why they filed the PUD is because they're building fewer units than what the underlying zoning would otherwise require. You know, housing is used by right there, but we would require them to have more units than what they actually desire to build. So I believe, as Councilman Anderson pointed out, that this project complies with what we are required to do when a planned unit development comes in front of us. And so that's what I intend to do tonight.
All right, with no further comments, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Kemp.
Aye.
Member Prang. Aye. Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Nay.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And again, thank you very much to Kimco as well as to members of staff for all the work that you put into this. So thank you. Everyone, we are now moving on to Mayor's Choice. So first up is going to be a, want to see, hold on one second. So staff is asking for a letter of support regarding a redesignation of the enterprise zone. So it is expiring. You see the memo within the packet itself. But just one thing that I do want to point out regarding this enterprise zone. So we've been administering this enterprise zone for Sheridan, Englewood, and Littleton in the past. That's going to be changing. We're not sure exactly who's going to be administering it, but maybe Arapahoe County, but we're not sure yet. But really what staff is asking for at this point is just a letter of support to apply for the enterprise zone redesignation for 2025. So just wanted to see if everyone would be, if there's any concerns regarding that fact at this point. So, okay. All right. We'll go ahead and just
Mayor,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
this would be the last year, 2025, and then it goes to whoever moving forward?
So it would, this is for the redesignation for 2025.
Okay.
So that's what they're asking for, a letter of support for 2025.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I think we do have a majority of council that does want to see a letter of support. All right, second item for me is just the, as part of the Sister Cities delegation, I'm asking to travel to Belm, Germany. It's going to be here in about 3 weeks. It's the week of the 16th, I want to say, Sean. So this is going to fall under the disposable income for my share, and we're estimating flights to be about $2,000 or so for the flight, but Belm is going to be picking up the housing costs. We already have paid for the 6 students as well as for the 6 students to be flying out. So this is just seeing if any members of council have any concern with me flying to Belm, Germany for this. So just asking for approval. I will provide an update as part of my travels, and I'll keep you posted on how that all goes. So, all right, perfect. I see no disagreement on that fact. I have nothing else. Council member's choice. Member Ward, go ahead.
I have one item that is perhaps a little sensitive, and it's not been this council's practice in the past to belay or cancel a council request made by another council member. But there were some council requests made tonight that I think perhaps risk assuming that something happened, or perhaps might not actually be in the best interest of the public to have publicly disclosed or discussed. And so as I said, it's sensitive, and I'm not sure what the best way to handle it is. But because we had a public discussion of it, I think the only way to go through this is to continue that public discussion as far as what is or isn't in the best interest of the city, its staff, and the body when it comes to council requests. I looked for policy. I don't see anything specific in regards to what a member is or isn't entitled to do. And I have in the past made council requests that consume an extensive amount of staff time. So I don't want this to become a personality matter where there's someone that I personally have differences with that comes in front of council, and I think that we should tell them to pound sand every time they come in front of this body. And because we didn't, I'm looking to cancel something that another council member did. But that ultimately is kind of what is happening in this moment. So I don't know where we go from there, but it does raise my concern and my hackles that the authority of the body itself is being used to engage in a discussion that I am not particularly interested in having.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Member Ward, on that item. I agree. I was almost wondering whether or not it would just, for anyone that is looking for that type of information, if any members of council, if they would just want to have a conversation with our city manager and possibly anyone else that needs to be part of those conversations, but not make it part of a council request. I think that may be a better way to approach it than have it as part of a council request, because I am sensitive to the fact that some information may be made public, although it could be made public anyway, but I'm just wondering if there was a better avenue to approach that. But go ahead, Member Wright.
Oh, I'm just for my
Oh,
council.
you're-
I'm
okay.
listening right now. This
Yeah.
is, I had a council request. That's why my light was on. So is it for transparency or because of my council request?
For me personally, it's just that I'm in the habit of not raising council requests for a specific report involving citizens or members of the public. That information, I could just go to the city manager to get a little bit more information without making it public for anyone to see within our portal. So that's more my stance, but I'm not sure, Member Ward, if you have anything to add, but for me personally, it's just.
So if I may make it, we know one person's name and I know that person. We all know that person. What if I go to her and ask her how she feels about it? That other person I don't know from Adam, so there's not a whole lot I could do about that. Have no contact information, I'd have to look and see what the name is again, or go back to emails we've received, so no way of contacting that person to see how they feel about it. The other, we all know. I could see how she feels about it. If she wants me to take it behind closed doors, I will. The other person I can't control at this point. That's all I could say about it.
Right.
So, unless there's another suggestion.
So, or I guess from what I'm hearing, are you willing to withdraw them until you get further information from either the two people that you?
Well, one of the people I can't contact,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Right. But then the second person,
Yes.
you do know.
Yes.
So you're willing to hold off on that item?
Yes.
Okay.
I can
Let's hold off on that
compromise.
item and then until you get further information from that individual.
That's fine.
All right. I saw two lights, but are they now off at this point?
I'll just make one comment on this subject
topic,
before
yeah.
we move on. I've had a number of times had people come to me and say, "Hey, you're on city council, but you find out, what happened at this address at this time." And I've always told them, like, if I go pull a police report as a council request, it's public information for everybody to see, and I don't want to do that to somebody. And so I recommend they go down to the police department and get that report directly as a public records request, because I think that's the best way to handle specific, like we've a number of times pulled police information on number of calls for service for a, location, that kind of thing. That's a little different to me, but pulling specific police records for specific interactions and making it a public thing that anybody can look at, I question the wisdom in that, or setting a precedent that that's something we do, even if, even if the person would approve of it.
Right, well, when, I understand. And I've never had anyone come to me and say, pull a police report or something. If someone asks me something on something else, Member Ward has taught us very well how to use resources, and that's what I do. If it's something else that we can't, we have other resources that I go to quite often, and I think they could account to that. So and sometimes we need to be transparent. If we need to say, hey, something was said and it was blown out of proportion and this is not what happened, okay. If something has happened and the city needs to make a correction, we need to own it and that correction needs to be made, period. There's three sides to a story, his, hers, and the truth. And sometimes we need to reveal that truth, period. That's how it is sometimes. And I will talk to this person and see. The other one, I don't know from Adam. If we crossed him in the street, I wouldn't know who it is. So.
All right. Member Rita, yes, so you're up next for Councilmember.
Yes, so I actually had a council request in the same line as Mr. Was it Simpson this evening? Simone, excuse me.
Yeah.
I drive Santa Fe quite often, and Santa Fe between Hampton and Bellevue, I know it's Englewood, I know it's Sheridan, I know it's Littleton. It's a real embarrassment to all of our cities right now with the amount of trash on it. So if there is a way that I could do a council request and see if we could work with all three cities to get 285 cleaned up a little bit, because it just makes all three of our cities look really bad, especially Littleton. Getting on 285 northbound from Bellevue. Santa Fe, Bellevue northbound onto Santa Fe.
On 85, yeah.
Yeah, and people think it's Bellevue, and I get or Englewood, and I get calls, and I'm like, no, that's not Englewood quite yet. And they're like, well, you need to do something about it. I'm like, I can't, it's not Englewood, so.
Yeah, so, remember, right, so that actually would be CDOT. So we actually would request CDOT to go out there.
Well, I know on 285 quite often we work with Sheridan to go do, like in the turn circle from 285 onto Santa Fe. So is it CDOT?
CDOT would actually do Santa.
Or is the cities take care of that?
It's actually all CDOT property, and I think there was a similar council request on this, and we always try to compel CDOT to go and do some of this cleanup. But if we just simply can't get a response, we have, particularly on Hampden, done our own cleanup because we can't get action from CDOT.
And even on the other side of the fence where the RTD and railroad tracks are, I don't know if we could work with them, but there's an awful lot of trash on that side also. So it's looking wintry, how all the trash accumulates.
And on that question, Member Wright, is that in between the two fences on either side of the railroad tracks?
Yes.
And that is actually BNSF right-of-way, although RTD has rights to, I think one of the lines is actually fast tracks lines from RTD, but we can work with them on that area.
But
so
on the
very
CDOT
interjurisdictional.
on the CDOT side, it is much worse than anywhere else. So.
But
Thank you.
Point taken though, Member Wright, because I agree with you. There is a lot of trash on that area. So, Member Lewis, I think you have that information. So anyone else on council member's choice? All right, moving on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one item, and that is during my council one-on-ones last week, a couple of you asked me to have staff look at kind of the low-hanging fruit from the Affordable Housing Task Force that could be implemented somewhat quickly. I just wanted to get a sense from council if everybody's okay with staff preparing kind of an analysis on each one of the recommendations. I would assume that's what you would want us to do, but I also don't want to get in front of council with us, taking a position on any of this. Ultimately, that's your decision, but just providing some analysis and options for council based on, what the task force discussed as well as what we're seeing in other communities.
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead,
So
Member Russell.
what is really the next step with the affordable housing?
We have, so Sean, you can speak to this, but we do have a meeting, well, we will have a study session coming up. I want to say it's in March, but staff will be coming back to us as part of this and have discussions about the specific items that were recommended by the Affordable Housing Task Force, and from there, we will decide on the next steps from there, but it will come back as a study session.
So then my question is, why would we go ahead and have them look at the low-hanging fruit before we talk about all of it as a council?
Well, I should probably clarify. It's really an analysis of the recommendations, like how long would they take, how much money would they take to implement, and that sort of thing. So I think that was kind of the consensus I got from council members, a few council members, is that they just want to see, how difficult or expensive these are and have staff analyze that. And I think that would be probably what I would do in any other city. But here I just want to do a check-in with council since this came up in my one-on-ones and just make sure that you're okay with staff providing that analysis.
Was any of that under the purview of the Affordable Housing Task Force of deciding, expense-wise of different things, or no?
No, it was not necessarily in their, the guidance that you all gave them when you established that task force. And it certainly wasn't something that they dug into. I think they're very interested in kind of seeing the analysis on some of those. They heard bits and pieces of it throughout the different sessions from the different experts in the different area fields throughout the process. But no, they did not make that a part of their work, nor were they really tasked with that analysis.
Okay, so I actually believe that things are beginning to become more affordable. I think prices are going to go down. Are we wasting a lot of time by going into this if everything does go down and become affordable? I mean, because, well, and maybe that's not totally true. If we go into hyperinflation, there's nothing going to be affordable. But I'm just wondering if we're a little bit premature in doing that. So I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of it right now. I mean, if you want to go ahead and talk, there's probably consensus to move forward, but I'm not necessarily there. Thank you.
Member Pring?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a strong opinion on the analysis piece. I'm fine with that. I did have a brief conversation with Mayor Pro Tem. I think right after we were presented with the Affordable Housing Task Force report, and when we were discussing next steps, there was some discussion about looking at the land use legislation that's come through in relation to the recommendations within the report. And I just would ask that you and Mayor Pro Tem, as you're working with City Manager to plan the study sessions, think about whether those need to be two separate study sessions. I just don't want us to get bogged down with the land use legislation conversation and have that really take away from the focus of really digging into each of the recommendations. So just something to consider as you're looking at planning out those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Member Pring. Member Noonan-Camp.
Just to respond to Member Russell, I think that it's a good question to say, hey, how much resource do we want to sink into this and staff time before we make decisions about what we want to move forward with? I would benefit, because we already had the initial study session where we had the recommendations presented to us, to help decide what do we want to move forward with. I would really benefit from staff analysis so that we know what are we saying yes to, because I think without additional analysis and information, it's hard to make an informed decision around what would still make sense for our community and for our long-term housing needs. So I think understanding, oh, some of this is really easy versus some of this would require maybe a budget allocation or another staff member would be helpful for even determining next steps and what we want to move forward with. So I would support it.
All right. Perfect. Go ahead, Member Lewis, or City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. I did think of one other thing, and that is, since you all approved the Belm travel and the Belm resolution tonight, I am working with Frame D Art, who's I'm commissioned essentially a plaque of the mural that they recently put on their building with an inscription as our gift. We need to have a gift. And so if you have better ideas than that, Brian Hart at Frame D Art has not started on that, since I just talked to him yesterday. But if you have other ideas, we need to present a gift, and he's doing a pretty decently discounted price on that. But it's kind of a hard framed plaque of that mural with an inscription with the delegation visit date.
Okay. So do you want us to just shoot you ideas if we have
That would be
anything else?
great.
Okay.
Yeah, if there are any objections to that, but yeah, I mean, we could also have a secondary gift kind of from the mayor to the mayor, but these are the types of things you do in these delegation visits. You exchange something kind of special from your community, and we'll be displaying ours here at the Civic Center, whatever Belm gives us. So
Yeah, I could give them an unused gavel.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. It's a Member Nooncamp. Anything else?
No, I'm sorry.
All right. Anything else, City Manager Lewis? All right. With that, we are now adjourned, everyone. We will see you all next week. Have a good evening.